I want to welcome all of you, and thank you for coming to this beautiful place on the Bragg Organic Farm today. On behalf of the Poynter family, Andy Poynter, his brother, and all of Dan's beloved friends and colleagues to come and pay a tribute to his life. He brought a lot of joy to this world, and I think all of us here today were touched by him in one way or another. I want to thank Dr. Patricia Bragg for hosting this memorial. She and Dan were close friends for a long time. I think he was always her white knight, always giving her the right advice when it came to her wonderful line of self-help books, and she always supported him right back. And she still does by continuing his legacy. On behalf of all of us, thank you, Dr. Bragg.
Aloha from Hawaii. This is Dr. Patricia Bragg, Health Crusader to the world. And I thank Dan Poynter, my treasured friend for over 40 years, my neighbor. I honored him for all that he taught me on publishing the Bragg health books. He gave me his distributor, his printer, and he taught me about the web. Oh, I knew nothing about all of this 40 years ago. And Dan, you are my treasured friend, Mr. Publisher.
Dan has addressed audiences all around the world. He's traveled to more than 40 countries, he's skydived into the North Pole, and he once appeared as a vision in a small Italian village. At the North Pole, the temperature was cold, the audience was small, and the speech was short. When Dan is not speaking to business audiences, he's flying through the air, mostly vertically, leading the way. Notice that he does not stop to ask for directions. Dan is past president of the Parachute Industry Association, past chairman of the board of the U.S. Parachute Association, and past president of the International Hang Gliding Commission. A pilot, master parachute rigger, and skydiving instructor / examiner, he also has all the licenses and ratings, more than 1,200 jumps, and 12 hours of time in free fall. Dan has provided years of wisdom, guidance, and leadership to many exciting high-speed sports.
It's no surprise that an author needs a publisher to get his or her work in print, and while the professionals traditionally have been quite distinct, technology is now opening up the publishing trade even to the author. CNN's Gary Tuckman reports.
Think about the image that your title is projecting.
Dan Poynter is a California author who holds self-publishing workshops.
Dan Poynter is an author, publisher, entrepreneur, skydiver, and adventurer. His workshops have been featured on CNN, his books have been pictured on WSJ, and his story has been told in U.S. News and World Report. The media comes to Dan because he is the leading authority on choosing your challenges.
Let me start with my own thanks for here to celebrate the memory of my brother, Daniel Frank Poynter. Being the oldest in the family constellation, he set up a benchmark for his siblings, and perhaps for many of you. I'd like to remember him as an inspirational astronaut.
I want to come back to this this little phrase that has sort of stuck with all of us about not dying with a book inside of you. And I've really taken that to heart. You know, if you can get past the mental image of a book stuck in the spleen or maybe down in the lower abdomen there, and really take a step back and think about what Dan was saying with that. You know, it's very empowering to me. This picture over here is great. This was one of his high watermarks. I mean, he had on his business card for a number of years. That's the North Pole. That's probably the only place where he wasn't able to convert those penguins around there to start self-publishing or jumping out of airplanes or something. You know?
I want to say not many people in this world can command a following of people and fans, if you like, who will pay and sit in your front room and listen to hear you speak. They'll hear you speak, and then they'll buy your books.
No one did more to help me achieve my dreams than he did. And it is because of all his kindness and his generosity that I am where I am today. Living those dreams, I have sung his praises to literally tens of thousands of people in my life, and I will continue to. Thank you so very much, Dan. I appreciate you more than words can ever say.
He's guy. I've had millions of questions, and he's answered every one of them, and I've always followed his advice. He's such an amazing person. He's the most influential person of my lifetime.
She said she owes everything to Dan Poynter because one time she wanted to see Dan Poynter, and she thought Dan would be so busy, but he had all the time in the world to see her, and she came up from Pasadena to meet him.
So I'm not a public speaker, and it's just kind of nerve-wracking for me, but I just wanted to say a couple other things, just a little more personal note about my uncle. Before I got to know him well, he was sort of this legend because he's my dad's 10 years older brother, and I'd heard so many stories, and he was just, certainly not the most, in social situations, talkative or forthcoming guy, but I asked him questions at times like, Uncle Dan, is it true that you poured beer in my dad's ear? And why did you do that? Well, I wanted to see what happened. Okay. Uncle Dan, why did you hang Dad off the balcony in San Francisco by his ankles? Because he deserved it. He was unapologetic. He never made excuses, and he didn't take excuses. At one time I asked him, Uncle Dan, why didn't you get married or have a family? And he looked at me, because I didn't have to. And that was him. And he was just one of the most interesting, most incredible people I've ever met, and has supported so many people, as evidenced by all the stories we've heard today. And I also owe him a huge thank you because he helped support me through medical school. And even in medical school, though, he would ask me, why aren't you writing? I was like, well, I'm kind of busy. And he would just be, well, are you gonna do or are you gonna teach? And that was him. And he lived by those words himself. He was always doing, he was always teaching, he was always trying to be a better person and a better man. And I think we are all better off for him. And I'm gonna miss my uncle, and I know you guys are all gonna miss him too.
My name is Bill Booth. I've known Dan for 40 years. Dan was always the most serious guy in the world to me. And the one time that I saw Dan acting like a kid is when I took that picture of him at the North Pole. All right. I've never seen him that loose. I always thought Dan, when he had a beard, looked like Abraham Lincoln. You put a hat on his head. And he was someone we looked up to. He was always the chairman of something, in some parachuting thing. With a name like Booth, I wanted to be more careful with this Abraham Lincoln. So I had to become good friends with him. My job is, I'm a parachute manufacturer and have several parachute patents, and Dan was the first guy I met that had a parachute patent, so he had a big effect on us. He wrote the Bible that all of us parachute manufacturers use to learn the history of how people had done things in the past. And you know who wrote the other Bible? Well, Dan was a god to us, and I just want to say we really, really miss him.
Dan and I go back a lot earlier than a lot of you. My name's Alan Silver. I have a parachute company, and I first met Dan, I think it was like 1962 or 3. And Dan only had one really bad habit. He liked Budweiser beer. and we tried to get him to buy other beer, but it didn't work all the time. He always went back to his Budweiser beer. But he was an inspiration, like Bill Booth said, to all of us. And I cherish my parachute manual because it says in there, to my good friend Alan.
Hello, I'm Susan Moss, and 25 years ago, in December, I was diagnosed with breast and uterine cancer, and my doctor was urging me to see the surgeon immediately, and I said no. And I went back to my studio, and he called me every single day and insisted I see the surgeon immediately, and I said no. And I had some past healing experience with a lump in my neck. I'm an artist. I was using acrylic paint and big drums. And I decided to heal myself. And so I made a health program called MOTEP, Marathon Olympic Tumor Eradication and Prevention Program. And I went on it gung-ho. And my doctor finally said, well, come back in 2 months. And within that time, a week before, I got rid of both tumors in my body. So, and then one day I looked down and there was a postcard, and I don't know where it came from, but it said, learn how to publish your own book at a hotel, and it was like $40 or something. And I thought, wow, maybe I should try this. And so I went early, and there was Dan.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much.